Welcome to Suzy Space. Today, we're diving into the heart of African folk tales. These stories are not just tales, they are windows into the wisdom, humor, and lessons of our culture. Let's embark on this storytelling journey together, from tales of resilience to the magical land of Ojinma. Don't forget to share your favorite moments in the live chat. Let's get started. We begin with the story of Ngozi, a tale that reminds us never to judge a book by its cover.
There was a girl no one noticed. She was mocked, laughed at, and called names, until one day, a secret hidden in plain sight would change everything. She was more than they ever imagined. But what would she do when the truth was revealed? Stay tuned to discover the incredible story of the girl destined to lead. In a small village, there lived a quiet girl named Ngozi. She was gentle, soft-spoken, and always stayed at the back of the class, with her head lowered. Everyone thought she was just an ordinary girl, someone not worth noticing. But little did they know, Ngozi carried a secret that would shake the whole village. Ngozi was the target of cruel jokes and heartless pranks. Every day, they found new ways to make her feel small, just because she looked different and never fought back. Each day she passed by the hallway, a group of popular girls in the school would gather, whispering and laughing while pointing at her. They often teased her for her old clothes and her lack of friends. They pushed her books to the ground and sneer, calling her Ngozi. But no one knew her story, the story her grandmother once whispered to her in the quiet hours of the night. Ngozi's grandmother spoke of an ancient kingdom that was hidden by time, a kingdom ruled by fierce yet gentle queens. One day, you'll see, her grandmother whispered, you are worth more than they know. But Ngozi, who only knew hardship, didn't believe her. One day, a grand festival is announced. Ngozi tries to avoid the spotlight, but the village elders unexpectedly call for her. It turns out, they have been searching for someone with a birthmark, a mark that matches the ancient emblem of the hidden kingdom. The villagers gather in awe as the elder reveals the mark on Ngozi's arm, shaped like a crescent moon. The bullies watch in disbelief, their laughter fading as they realize who they've been mocking all along. She was the one destined to inherit the wisdom of their ancestors. As the festival goes on, Ngozi was accompanied to a royal home where she is dressed in a beautiful royal garment. The villagers bow as she walks through the crowd, no longer the shy girl in worn-out clothes but a young woman with an undeniable presence. Her confidence grows, and she stands tall for the first time. Ngozi, once hidden in the shadows, became the light of the village. She learned to carry herself with pride, not as a queen who looked down on others but as a leader who uplifted everyone. The bullies tried to apologize, but Ngozi only offered them kindness, showing the true strength of her heart. Ngozi's days were now filled with lessons of the past and visions for the future. She listened intently to the elders, learning the stories of her ancestors and the values they upheld. With each passing day, she grew more confident and determined to honor her heritage. When the village faced a dire drought, Ngozi's leadership was put to the test. She rallied the villagers, guiding them to an ancient well hidden in the hills. Her grandmother's tales had not only revealed her lineage but also the secrets to their survival. With Ngozi's guidance, the village came together, working as one to overcome the drought. The bullies, now humbled, joined in, recognizing the true strength and wisdom of the girl they once mocked. The village flourished, united under her leadership. This is the story of Ngozi, the girl no one noticed, who grew up to be more than anyone could have imagined. And so, Ngozi's journey reminds us of some important truths. Respect others, you never know the battles they are fighting or the strength they hold within. Kindness is powerful, even in the face of cruelty, showing kindness can inspire change in others. Believe in yourself, your worth is not determined by others' opinions, but by the strength and goodness in your heart. Unity brings strength. By coming together, a community can overcome even the greatest challenges. Remember, greatness can come from the most unexpected places. The world becomes a better place when we uplift one another rather than tear each other down.
Next, we discover if determination and love can conquer impossible odds in this tale of a poor farmer's quest. In the bustling kingdom of Enugu, a land of lush green hills and golden sunsets, Chiamaka's beauty was as legendary as the whispers of her dowry. Kings and chiefs from neighboring lands sought her hand, lured by her father's promise of a dowry so vast it rivaled the wealth of the kingdom itself. But Chiamaka's heart was restless. She longed for a love that stirred her soul, not a marriage bound by gold and land. Her father, the proud Chief Okonkwo, was unyielding in his quest for a suitor who could match the family's wealth. One evening, as the marketplace buzzed with life, Chiamaka ventured into the crowd disguised in a simple wrapper. She loved to feel the pulse of her people without the burden of her title. Among the vendors, musicians, and storytellers, her eyes met those of a young man playing the udu, a traditional clay drum. His music was enchanting, his smile genuine. His name was Yuzo, and in his gaze, Chiamaka felt a spark she had never known. That night, unable to shake the memory of Yuzo's music, Chiamaka returned to the market under the guise of darkness. She found him sitting under a mango tree, his udu resting by his side. They spoke for hours, sharing dreams and fears. Yuzo was a farmer's son, humble but rich in kindness and wisdom. His life was simple, yet his words carried a depth that resonated with her heart. Chiamaka realized she had found what she was searching for. But her happiness was bittersweet. How could she explain to her family that her heart had chosen a man with no riches? She knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but her resolve was firm. Love, she decided, was worth fighting for. Chiamaka began spending her nights sneaking out to meet Yuzo, their love growing like the wildflowers in the Enugu fields. They shared stories, laughter, and dreams of a life together. Yuzo, too, was captivated by Chiamaka's intelligence and warmth. Yet, he was painfully aware of the gap between their worlds. "Chiamaka," he said one evening, "what we have is beautiful, but your father would never accept a man like me." Chiamaka held his hand tightly. "Yuzo, I will fight for us. My heart cannot be bought, not even with the richest dowry." But her words were heavy with uncertainty. She knew convincing her family would be a battle unlike any she had faced before. Word of Chiamaka's frequent absences reached Chief Okonkwo's ears. He grew suspicious and set spies to follow her. When they reported her clandestine meetings with a poor farmer's son, his anger was volcanic. That evening, he summoned Chiamaka to his chambers. "Is it true?" he roared. "You disgrace this family by consorting with a pauper?" Chiamaka met her father's glare, her heart pounding. "Father," she began, her voice trembling but firm, "Yuzo is a good man. He loves me for who I am, not for what I represent." But Chief Okonkwo dismissed her words with a wave of his hand. "Love does not fill bellies or build kingdoms," he declared. "You will marry the man I choose." Devastated, Chiamaka sought solace in her mother, Mama Ada. Unlike her father, Ada understood the depths of a daughter's heart. "My child," she said, stroking Chiamaka's hair, "love is a treasure, but your father sees the world differently. You must find a way to show him Yuzo's worth." Her mother's words planted a seed of hope. Chiamaka began devising a plan. She would not give up on Yuzo, but she needed to prove to her father that true wealth lay in the goodness of a man's soul. Determined, Chiamaka invited Yuzo to meet her mother secretly. Mama Ada was skeptical at first, but soon saw the integrity and kindness in Yuzo's heart. She agreed to help them, but warned, Chief Okonkwo will not be easily swayed. Yuzo must prove himself worthy not just to the family, but to the entire community. Yuzo rose to the challenge. He began helping villagers with their farm work, repairing homes, and organizing festivals. Slowly, his deeds began to speak louder than his humble origins. The annual Festival of Unity was the perfect opportunity to showcase Yuzo's character. He coordinated the event, bringing together people from all walks of life. The festivities were a resounding success, and even Chief Okonkwo could not ignore the praise Yuzo received. But his pride still held him back. "He may be kind," Okonkwo admitted, "but he is not a match for my daughter." With the festival behind them, Chiamaka made one last plea to her father. She spoke of Yuzo's deeds, his heart, and her love for him. "Father," she said, tears streaming down her face, "do you not see? Yuzo's wealth is in his spirit. Is that not the kind of man you would want for your daughters?" For the first time, Chief Okonkwo faltered. He loved his daughter deeply, and her words stirred something within him. Okonkwo devised a final test for Yuzo. He would be given a plot of barren land and 1 season to turn it into a thriving farm. If he succeeded, he would earn Okonkwo's blessing. Yuzo accepted the challenge with determination, pouring his heart and soul into the task. Chiamaka and the villagers rallied around him, their support a testament to the respect he had earned. By the end of the season, the once barren land was brimming with crops. Yuzo's hard work and leadership had transformed it into a symbol of hope and perseverance. Chief Okonkwo could no longer deny Yuzo's worth. With a reluctant but proud heart, he gave his blessing. The wedding was a grand affair, attended by people from all over the kingdom. As Chiamaka and Yuzo exchanged vows, their love became a beacon for others, proving that true wealth lay not in riches, but in the strength of the human spirit. The kingdom of Enugu had witnessed a love story for the ages, and its legacy would endure for generations. Now, we enter the gripping story of Nkem, a young soul trapped in darkness. Her fight for freedom will inspire and remind us of the power of resilience and hope.
The air reeked of damp earth and fear as Nkem, her wrist raw from the tight ropes binding her, stared at the locked iron door. The muffled cries of others in the next room reminded her she wasn't alone in this nightmare. But she also knew one thing: if she didn't escape tonight, she might never see daylight again. Her fingers traced the small key she had managed to steal, knowing it was her only chance at freedom. In the quiet Nigerian village of Umuok, life moved to the rhythm of the corkscrew, the chatter of market women, and the occasional rumble of an old pickup truck navigating the dusty roads. Nkem, a slender young woman with sun-kissed skin and a determined spirit, navigated the bustling market carrying a basket of freshly harvested vegetables. Her grandmother, Mama Adana, had been coughing heavily that morning, her frail body showing signs of another restless night. The morning sun cast long shadows across the market stalls as Nkem arranged her vegetables with practiced care. Each tomato, each pepper represented hope, hope for medicine, hope for better days. The scent of roasting corn mingled with the earthy smell of yams, creating the familiar aroma of home. "Nkem, my child, the doctor's medicine is finished," Mama Adana had said earlier that morning, her voice barely above a whisper. "But God will provide." She had pressed her weathered hand against Nkem's cheek, her touch as light as a feather, her eyes bright with fever. With those words lingering in her mind, Nkem walked tirelessly, haggling with buyers and smiling even when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. Her best friend, Afiba, a cheerful woman with a contagious laugh and eyes that sparkled with mischief, often joined her at the market. Afiba's sharp tongue kept exploitative customers at bay, and her company lightened Nkem's burdens. "These prices are fair," Afiba would declare, hands on her hips, challenging anyone who dared to argue. Quality costs money, and Nkem's vegetables are the best in Umuok. Her presence was like a shield, protecting Nkem from the harsh realities of market life. That's when he appeared. Okonkwo. His presence was as commanding as the rumble of a storm. Tall, well-dressed in a crisp white kaftan, and with an air of confidence that turned heads, he approached Nkem's store. His polished shoes and gold wristwatch spoke of a wealth that was foreign to Umuok. The way he carried himself suggested power, influence, everything that seemed impossible in their humble village. "Are you Nkem?" he asked, his deep voice cutting through the market noise. The question carried weight, as if her answer would determine the course of fate itself. Startled, Nkem looked up from arranging a pile of fresh okra. Yes, sir. How can I help you? He smiled, revealing perfect teeth. I've heard of your hard work. I have an opportunity for you, one that will change your life and help your grandmother. His words dripped with honey, sweet and enticing. Afiba stepped closer, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. What kind of opportunity? She asked bluntly, her protective instincts flaring. Okonkwo's smile didn't falter. A job in the city. Good pay. Decent accommodation. Everything your grandmother needs. He pulled out a business card, the glossy surface catching the sunlight. I help talented young people find better opportunities. Your reputation for hard work has reached my ears. Nkem hesitated, her heart torn between hope and caution. The weight of Mama Adana's innards pressed heavily on her shoulders. Afiba grabbed her arm, fingers digging into her skin. Don't trust him, Nkem. We don't know who he is. But the promise of financial stability was too tempting to ignore. Nkem looked at her meager earnings for the day, barely enough for a week's worth of medicine. Tell me more about this job, she said, even as Afiba's grip tightened in warning. The next morning dawned with a mix of fog and uncertainty. Nkem packed a small bag, her hands trembling as she folded her best dress. She kissed Mama Adana goodbye, the old woman's blessing falling like gentle rain on her shoulders. May God protect you, my child, Mama Adana whispered, pressing a small wooden cross into Nkem's palm. Afiba stood at the edge of the village, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by worry. Promise me you'll be careful, she pleaded, hugging Nkem tightly. Promise me you'll come back if anything feels wrong. I promise, Nkem said, the words feeling hollow even as she spoke them. I'll send money as soon as I can. Okonkwo arrived in a sleek black car, the kind rarely seen in their village. The vehicle seemed out of place against the backdrop of mud houses and dirt roads, like a shark in a river. As the car sped away, Nkem looked out the window, watching the familiar sights of Umuk fade into the distance. The towering Iroko trees, the village square where children played, the small church with its tin roof, all disappeared like morning mist. Her first impression of the city was overwhelming. The skyscrapers reached toward the heavens like modern-day towers of Babel, their glass surfaces reflecting the harsh sun. The chaos of traffic, the endless streams of people, and the constant noise made her feel small and out of place. Everything moved too fast, too loud, too bright. Okonkwo took her to a modest apartment in a neighborhood that seemed to exist in the shadows of the gleaming city center. He handed her a stack of cash, the notes crisp and new. For your grandmother, he said, his voice gentle but his eyes cold. Your work begins tomorrow. That night, alone in the strange room, Nkem counted the money with trembling fingers. It was more than she would make in 3 months at the market. She sent a quick prayer of thanks heavenward, ignoring the small voice of doubt that whispered in her mind. But the next day brought confusion and terror. Instead of a legitimate job, Nkem was introduced to 2 stern-looking women whose eyes held no warmth. They ordered her to dress in clothes that made her skin crawl, to pose for photographs that made her want to disappear. When she refused, one of them slapped her hard across the face, the sound echoing in the small room. Do as you're told, or you'll regret it, the woman hissed, her breath hot against Nkem's cheek. You're ours now. Nkem soon realized the horrifying truth. Okonkwo had lured her into a dark world of exploitation. The apartment wasn't a safe haven but a prison, with cameras in every corner and guards posted at every exit. Other young women, their faces hollow with despair, shared the space like ghosts. They whispered stories of abuse and horrors too grim to recount, their voices barely audible over the constant hum of air conditioning that never quite masked the stench of fear. Back in Umuk, the rainy season arrived with its usual force, but something else hung heavy in the air: worry. Mama Adana grew increasingly anxious as days turned into weeks without word from Nkem. The money Okonkwo had given Nkem lasted only so long, and the old woman's cough grew worse with each passing day. Afiba, unable to shake her unease, began asking questions. She visited neighboring villages, showing Okonkwo's business card to anyone who would look. She discovered that no one in the village knew much about him, though the elders whispered of a man who had once lived among them but had vanished after being accused of unspeakable crimes. "The devil wears many masks," one elder told her, his rheumy eyes filled with concern. "And the brightest smile often hides the darkest heart." "We need to find her," Afiba declared to Mr. Chokuma, the village's only secondary school teacher. Her resolve was firm, her voice steady despite the fear that clutched at her heart. Mr. Chokuma, a quiet man who had always shown kindness to his students, listened to Afiba's story with growing concern. "This sounds like something I've read about," he said, pulling out a worn newspaper. "There have been reports of young women disappearing across different states." With his help, Afiba managed to gather enough money to travel to the city. The entire village contributed what they could, a few naira here, a few there. Even the market women who had once competed with Nkem gave what they could spare. Meanwhile, Nkem's situation grew increasingly dire. Okonkwo's true nature revealed itself in stages, like a venomous snake slowly uncoiling. He operated a sophisticated network that trafficked young women and harvested organs for profit, using legitimate-looking businesses as fronts for his operation. Days blurred into nights as Nkem plotted her escape, enduring unimaginable horrors but clinging to the wooden cross her grandmother had given her. She learned to be invisible when necessary, to observe without being noticed. She mapped the guards' routines in her mind, noted which ones were cruel and which ones might show a moment of weakness. One night, she overheard a conversation between Okonkwo and his associates about a shipment to another country. The words made her blood run cold. They were planning to move several girls, including her, to a location where they would never be found. Fear gripped her, but it also gave her clarity. She knew she had to act fast. Using a small piece of wire she had carefully pried from a broken window frame, she began working on the lock of her room during the quiet hours of the night. Afiba's determination led her through the labyrinthine streets of the city, following leads that often led nowhere. But fate has a way of rewarding persistence. Through a chance encounter at a local church, she met James, a journalist who had been investigating Okonkwo's activities for months. "These people are dangerous," James warned, showing her files of missing persons reports and suspicious financial transactions. "But if what you're saying is true, this could be the break we've been waiting for." Together, they located the apartment complex where Nkem was being held. The rescue mission was risky, involving a daring plan and the cooperation of a few brave locals who had lost their own daughters to trafficking. When Afiba finally burst through the door and saw Nkem's bruised and terrified face, tears streamed down her cheeks. "We're taking you home," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. But their escape wasn't smooth. Okonkwo and his men gave chase, leading to a dramatic confrontation at a bustling market. In the chaos, it was Mama Blessing, a market woman who had lost her own daughter years ago, who turned the tide. With a heavy wooden pestle in hand, she struck Okonkwo from behind as he cornered Nkem and Afiba. Back in Umuk, Nkem's return was met with a mix of joy and sorrow. She bore scars, both physical and emotional, but she was alive. Mama Adana held her tightly, whispering prayers of gratitude, her tears falling freely. The village rallied around them. Women brought food and comfort, men stood guard, and children sang songs of welcome. But the nights were still hard. Nkem would wake up screaming, the memories of her ordeal haunting her dreams. Okonkwo's arrest exposed a larger network of criminals, and James's relentless reporting brought national attention to the issue of human trafficking and organ trade. For the first time in years, there was hope that justice would prevail. Other victims came forward, their stories creating a tapestry of survival and resilience. Months later, Nkem stood before a crowd at a community center, her voice steady as she shared her story. The audience included young women from surrounding villages, their eyes wide with understanding and determination. "I survived because I never stopped believing that someone would come for me," she said, her gaze finding a fiber in the crowd. "And now, we must stand together to ensure no one else falls into the shadows. The darkness is powerful, but our unity is stronger." As the audience applauded, Afiba squeezed her hand, a silent reminder that even in the darkest moments, friendship and courage could light the way. Mama Adana, healthy now thanks to proper medical care, watched from the front row, her eyes shining with pride. In the years that followed, Nkem and Afiba established a foundation to help other survivors and prevent more young women from falling prey to traffickers. Their story became a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest places, the human spirit could triumph. The village of Yumuk changed too. Mr. Chokuma included awareness programs in his teaching, and the market women created a network to watch over each other's daughters. They had learned that safety lay not in silence, but in solidarity. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun painted the sky in shades of hope, Nkem would stand in her grandmother's compound, listening to the familiar sounds of village life. The cocks crow, the chatter of market women, the rumble of trucks on dusty roads, they were no longer just background noise, but a symphony of freedom, a reminder that she had found her way back to light.
Our journey now takes us to Ojinma, a land of mystery and lessons about unity and truth. In the heart of the great land of Ojinma, the sun gleamed brightly over a kingdom where peace and prosperity flourished. The people of Ojinma were known for their unity, their strength drawn not from weapons, but from a symbol, the sacred mask of unity. This mask, enshrined in the Great Hall of Wisdom, glowed faintly with divine energy. It had been a gift from the gods themselves, crafted to unite the 4 clans that lived within the kingdom, the northern, eastern, southern, and western clans. Through it, the people found balance, shared resources, and worked together, ensuring prosperity for all. The kingdom's rivers were full, the fields were rich with crops, and children laughed and played in the streets. No one ever went hungry, and the air was always filled with harmony. Yet, like all things, peace was fragile. One afternoon, a meeting was held in the Great Hall of Wisdom. The Council of Elders had gathered, their faces etched with concern as they discussed a growing divide among the regions. Voices were raised as the Northern clan demanded control over more of the kingdom's resources. They argued that it was their land that provided the most to the kingdom, and thus, they deserved more of the wealth. "We cannot continue to share the wealth of our rivers when it is our land that feeds the kingdom," said the Northern elder, his voice booming across the room. "But we, the Eastern clan, have worked the land for generations, and yet we have been mistreated. We have sacrificed so much for this kingdom," countered the Eastern elder, her face full of frustration. The tension in the room grew thick. As the leaders of the 4 clans debated, a small crack appeared on the sacred mask hanging on the wall. It was a subtle thing, barely noticeable, but Adana, a young scholar who had long studied the mask's power, saw it. She gasped in alarm, noticing the faint fissure running along the once unbreakable surface of the mask. "The mask, it weeps," she whispered to herself. She could not fathom what this meant, but she knew something was terribly wrong. The unity that had kept Ojinma together was now in jeopardy. Days passed, and the tension in Ojinma only grew. Villages began to argue over resources, and the once peaceful kingdom was now on the brink of civil unrest. Small skirmishes broke out between the clans. The sacred rivers that once nourished everyone were now the subject of fierce disputes, and the fields, once bountiful, began to wither as distrust spread like a disease. The crack in the sacred mask deepened, a symbol of the growing division. As the people's hearts hardened, the gods watched in sorrow. They had created Ojinma to be a land of unity, but now It seemed that the very foundation of the kingdom was crumbling. One night, as Adana slept in her study, a strange and powerful dream overtook her. She found herself standing in a storm, with thunder roaring above her and the wind howling in her ears. A voice, deep and ancient, echoed through the storm. "Adana," the voice called, "the mask of unity is broken, and the land suffers. You must find its shards, scattered across the kingdom. Only through unity will Ojinma be saved." Adana's heart raced as she tried to comprehend the meaning of the words. "But I am only a scholar," she protested. "How can I restore the mask alone?" The storm grew louder, but then another voice spoke, this one filled with power and strength. "You will not be alone. Seek the warrior, the healer, and the trader. Each holds a piece of the answer." When Adana awoke, she knew what she had to do. The gods had called her to action. She was no longer just a scholar. She was the bearer of hope. She needed to find the other 3 chosen ones, the ones who could help restore the sacred mask and bring Ojinma back from the brink of destruction. The morning light filtered through the windows as Adana prepared for her journey. She packed only what she could carry, her books, her notes, and a small satchel of food. She knew her first task was to find Ojinma, the warrior, who would aid her in the quest. Her journey took her through the dense forests of Ojinma, where the trees whispered with the wind. She followed the path that led to the southern border, where Ojinma's village was located. As she approached, the sounds of clashing metal reached her ears. Ojinma was fighting. When Adana arrived, she saw him, a tall man with a broad chest and fierce eyes, battling a group of raiders who had dared to threaten his people. He swung his sword with precision, each movement a calculated strike. Adana watched in awe as he swiftly dispatched the attackers, his strength unmatched. When the last raider fell, Ojinma turned to see Adana standing nearby. He wiped the sweat from his brow and strode over to her. "I fight for my people," Ojinma said gruffly. "Why should I care about a broken mask?" Adana looked him in the eye, her voice steady despite the urgency she felt. "Because the mask is not just a symbol. It is the soul of Ojinma. Without it, this land will fall." Ojinma looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "If what you say is true, then I will fight for the mask. Together, we will restore Ojinma." With Ojinma by her side, Adana's next stop was the east, where Amara, the healer, was tending to the sick and the starving. She found Amara in a small refugee camp, surrounded by children in tattered clothes. Amara's hands worked tirelessly, mixing herbs and soothing the pain of those who came to her for help. Adana approached her cautiously. "Amara, the gods have called us," she said. "We need your help to restore the sacred mask." Amara paused for a moment, looking up at Adana. She was weary, her face lined with exhaustion. "How can I leave these children? They need me now more than ever." Adana placed a hand on Amara's shoulder. "Without the mask, their suffering will only grow. Help me so we can help them all." Amara hesitated for a long moment before nodding. "Very well, but I will not abandon them for long." Finally, Adana made her way to the bustling market in the west, where she found Nkem, the trader. He was a man of logic and reason, more concerned with profit than with spiritual matters. He was surrounded by merchants and customers, haggling for the best deals. Adana approached him, knowing that convincing him would be difficult. "Nkem, the gods have spoken. The sacred mask must be restored to save Ojinma." Nkem raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on his lips. "The gods, you say? I deal in facts, not legends. But if the mask restores the land, then trade will thrive again. I'll join you, but only because it benefits me." Adana nodded, relieved that Nkem was willing to join the cause. "Your help is all I ask." The journey ahead would not be easy. With their band now complete, Adana, Ojinma, Amara, and Nkem. Together they set out towards the northern part of Ojinma, where the first shard of the sacred mask was said to be hidden. But before they could retrieve it, they would face a trial that would test not just their strength, but their hearts. They arrived at the River of Shadows, a once clear stream now dark and foreboding. The water seemed to swallow the light, and the air was thick with a heavy mist. The river's current was strong, but it was not the water that they feared. It was the spirits that haunted the river, spirits born of doubt, betrayal, and regret. "This is the River of Shadows," Adana explained, her voice solemn. "It is said that those who cross must confront the doubts within themselves. It is the test of trust." The guardians arrived at the River of Shadows, a once clear stream now dark and foreboding. The water seemed to swallow the light, and the air was thick with a heavy mist. The river's current was strong, but it was not the water that they feared. It was the spirits that haunted the river, spirits born of doubt, betrayal, and regret. "This is the River of Shadows," Adana explained, her voice solemn. "It is said that those who cross must confront the doubts within themselves. It is the test of trust." The guardians exchanged uneasy glances. They could hear whispers carried on the wind, soft but persistent. Each whisper seemed to call their name, speaking their fears aloud. Ojinma, the warrior, stepped forward first. He gripped his sword tightly, his jaw set. "We will face whatever lies ahead, together." As they waded into the icy water, the whispers grew louder, turning into voices that echoed around them. Ojinma heard accusations of failure, voices mocking his ability to protect his people. He faltered, his steps slowing as shadows swirled around him. "You failed them," a voice hissed. "You cannot save anyone." Adana placed a hand on his arm. "Do not listen. These are lies meant to weaken you. Look at us. We stand with you." Ojinma closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and pushed forward, breaking through the shadowy figures. Amara, the healer, was next to falter. The voices whispered of the lives she couldn't save, the children she left behind. "You abandoned them," a voice accused. "They will perish because of you." Tears welled in her eyes, but Ikin's voice cut through the haze. "Your work has saved countless lives. Focus on what you can do now, not what you couldn't do before." Amara nodded, her resolve strengthening. Together, they made it to the other side of the river, their bond stronger for having faced their fears. The journey continued into the Forest of Hunger, a magical and treacherous place where the trees seemed alive, their twisted branches reaching out as if to grab anyone who ventured too close. The air was heavy with the scent of decay, and the ground was littered with rotting fruit. The guardians soon realized that the forest was not just a place of physical danger, it mirrored the suffering caused by the kingdom's division. As they moved deeper, their hunger grew unbearable, and the illusions of bountiful feasts appeared before them. Ikin was the first to speak. "Why should we suffer when the forest offers us food? Surely, it cannot hurt to take a little for ourselves." Adana's voice was firm. "The forest is testing us. If we give in to our hunger, we will never find the shard. We must resist." The group pressed on, ignoring the tempting sights and smells. They reached the heart of the forest, where a massive tree stood, its bark etched with ancient runes. Embedded in the tree's trunk was a shard of the sacred mask, glowing faintly. Ojinma stepped forward to retrieve it, but the tree's roots sprang to life, wrapping around him. The guardians worked together, using their combined strength and skills to free him and retrieve the shard. As soon as the shard was removed, the forest began to wither, its illusions fading. Their next challenge took them to the Mountain of Thunder, a place where the warring kings of the northern and eastern clans had gathered with their armies. The air crackled with electricity, and the skies roared with thunder. The guardians approached cautiously, knowing that their mission would not be easy. Adana stepped forward, addressing the kings. "We come not to fight, but to restore what was broken. The sacred mask must be whole again, for the sake of all Ojinma." The kings, consumed by their anger and pride, refused to listen. A fierce battle erupted, with Ojinma leading the charge to defend the group. Amara worked tirelessly to heal the wounded, while Ikin used his cunning to outmaneuver the enemy. In the chaos, Adana managed to reach the second shard of the mask, hidden in the depths of a cavern beneath the mountain. With the shard in hand, the guardians retreated, their mission far from over. The journey took its toll on the group as they ventured into the desert of silence, a vast and desolate expanse where the heat was oppressive and the air eerily still. The desert tested their resolve, each of them battling their inner doubts and fears in the deafening silence. Amara spoke softly, her voice breaking the stillness. "I don't know if we're strong enough to finish this. The weight of it all, it feels too much." Adana placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We are strong because we are together. The gods chose us for a reason. We cannot give up now." At the edge of the desert, they found the Cave of Memories, a place filled with ancient carvings and murals depicting the history of Ojinma. As they explored the cave, they uncovered the truth about the sacred mask. Adana traced her fingers along a mural, her voice trembling. The mask was not always a symbol of peace. It was once a weapon, used to control the clans. Only when the clans united and chose to work together did it become a symbol of unity. The Guardians realized that the mask's power came not from the gods alone but from the people's willingness to trust and support one another. With the final shard in hand, the Guardians returned to the Great Hall of Wisdom, where the shattered mask awaited them. As they placed the shards together, a dark and malevolent spirit emerged, a manifestation of the greed and distrust that had fractured the kingdom. The Guardians faced the spirit in a climactic battle, combining their strengths to overcome it. Adana's wisdom, Obina's strength, Amara's compassion, and Ikin's cunning worked in harmony, and together, they defeated the spirit, banishing it from Ojinma. The sacred mask was restored, glowing brighter than ever before. The kingdom of Ojinma began to heal, its people inspired by the Guardians' journey and their message of unity. As the sun rose over the kingdom, Adana spoke to the gathered crowd. "The mask is whole again, but true unity is not just a symbol. It is a choice we must make every day. Let us build a future where we stand together, stronger than ever." The people cheered, their hearts filled with hope. Ojinma had been saved, not just by the restoration of the sacred mask, but by the lessons learned along the way. The Guardians parted ways, each returning to their lives, but their bond remained unbroken, a testament to the power of unity. Thank you for joining me on this storytelling journey. These tales remind us of the courage, love, and resilience that guide us in life. Which story spoke to your heart the most? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on Suzy Space.
See you next time.